What if I told you that out of the roughly 1 million words in the English dictionary, you really only need to master about 50 of them to understand and fully participate in, like, 80% of daily conversations?
I mean, it sounds like a total gimmick, right?
Right.
But when you actually look at the raw data of how native English speakers communicate day to day, that statistic totally holds up.
It's wild.
It is. The vast majority of our daily interaction is built on this incredibly tiny foundation of high-frequency words.
Welcome to the Clear English channel, everyone. Today's deep dive is designed to be a complete paradigm shift for you.
Oh, huge one.
Our mission today is to rescue you from the trap of memorizing those endless, complicated vocabulary lists and show you the actual shortcut to fluency.
Because honestly, we have all been there.
Right. If you have ever found yourself standing in a coffee shop or, sitting in a Zoom meeting, knowing a ton of English words, but still feeling completely paralyzed when it's your turn to speak, this deep dive is going to change everything.
The overarching theme we uncovered in the research today fundamentally redefines language strategy. We are looking at a system where verbs are the absolute non-negotiable core of the language.
The absolute core.
Yeah. I mean, you can form a coherent thought without an adjective. You can even imply a noun. But the verb is the bare minimum requirement for a sentence to even exist. Control the verbs, and you basically control the language.
Let's explore why so many learners get this completely backwards. The research identifies this phenomenon as the vocabulary freeze.
Oh, the vocabulary freeze. Anyone who has ever tried to learn a second language knows exactly what this feels like.
Right. You sit down with your flashcards and you spend hours learning these highly specific multisyllable nouns.
Like you know the exact terminology for a corporate restructuring.
Exactly. Or the precise word for a shimmering chandelier. Then you step into a real conversation. A native speaker asks you a simple question and your brain just completely stops working.
Total freeze.
The conversation dies. And it's not because you don't know enough words. It's because you don't know the words that actually initiate the action.
You've populated your mental stage with all the actors, but you haven't given them the muscles to actually move.
I really like that.
Yeah, because nouns, by their very nature, are static. A boardroom is literally just a room. A spreadsheet is just a document.
They just sit there waiting for something to happen.
Right. Verbs, on the other hand, provide the momentum. They're the energy of the conversation. They dictate who is interacting with those nouns, how the situation is changing, and where the thought is going.
So when a learner focuses all their energy on stockpiling static nouns... Wait, I shouldn't say that when they just collect nouns, they're preparing for a written exam, not a real-time conversation.
Exactly.
Learning all those fancy nouns without mastering your core verbs is basically like building a $1 million state-of-the-art luxury sports car. You polish the exterior, you upgrade the leather seats, but you completely forget to install an engine.
It looks incredibly impressive sitting in your driveway.
Your colleagues might even be impressed by the flashcards on your desk. But the moment you turn the key to actually go somewhere, nothing happens. You are just stuck.
That analogy hits the nail right on the head because it really highlights the mechanical failure of that approach. The methodology we're looking at today is essentially handing you the keys to the most reliable engine available.
The 50 words.
Yeah. The shift in focus is profound. Instead of diluting your mental energy across 1,000 different niche words, you redirect all that focus toward a highly concentrated pool of 50 high-frequency actions.
And that provides the immediate, practical momentum.
Right. It gets you out of the driveway and into the flow of 80% of real-world interactions.
Okay, so we toss out the idea that we need a massive, sophisticated vocabulary just to navigate a morning meeting or talk about our weekend plans. We focus on the engine.
But an engine is made of parts.
Right, and some parts are more critical than others. The research highlights a foundational trio, which we can call the big three. These are the absolute titans of English verbs: be, have, and do.
Those three are the structural bedrock. If you strip the English language down to its absolute studs, those are the three beams holding the entire house up.
Let's break down their distinct roles, because on the surface, they seem almost insultingly simple.
They do.
First, you have be. So words like am, is, are, was, were. This verb handles states of being, identity, and condition.
Yeah.
Like, I am a manager, or the project is late.
Right.
Then you have, which handles possession and experience. We have a problem, or they have a new client.
Yeah.
Finally, you have day, the engine of general action. I do the reporting, or we do business. But I have to pause here and challenge the premise a bit.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
The data suggests that if a learner intensely studies just these 3 specific verbs, their practical fluency will essentially double.
It does say that.
I am really struggling to see how 3 basic words, which most beginners learn on day 1, can do that much heavy lifting for an adult professional.
Well, it feels counterintuitive until you look at the hidden mechanics of English grammar. These 3 verbs, be, have, and do, are totally unique because they do double duty.
Like a double life.
Basically, yeah.
Mhm.
On the surface layer, they act as main verbs, carrying the primary meaning of the sentence, exactly like the examples you just gave. I have a contract.
Okay.
But their real power, the reason mastering them literally unlocks the language, is that they act as helper verbs. They are the invisible scaffolding of almost every complex thought you want to express.
Let's dig into that mechanism. What does it actually mean to act as a grammatical helper?
It means they lose their literal definition and instead become structural tools that indicate time, possibility, or condition. Think about the verb be.
Okay.
You cannot form any continuous action in English without it. You can't just say, I walking. You must use the helper. You say, I am walking, or the market is crashing.
Oh, I see. And the same applies to have.
Exactly. It stops meaning to possess and
Ah.
becomes the tool we use to connect the past to the present. Like, I have finished the report.
Right, because you don't physically possess a finished report in your hands.
No, you're using have to construct the perfect tense.
Okay, that makes total sense for be and have. But what about do? That one has always fascinated me because English seems, well, uniquely obsessed with it.
Oh, do is arguably the most critical mechanism for a learner to master because of a quirk linguists call do support.
Do support.
Yeah. In English, you cannot simply ask a question or make a negative statement by just flipping the words around like you can in so many other languages.
Right, like if I want to ask about your coffee habits, I don't say, like, you coffee.
Exactly. I have to bring in our structural helper. I have to say, do you like coffee?
Or for a negative, I can't just say, I not agree. I have to build the scaffolding and say, I do not agree.
Exactly that. Do operates as the structural pillar that allows questions and negatives to exist.
Wow.
If you don't fully internalize how be, have, and do function mechanically, not just what they mean, but how they maneuver other words around you will constantly stumble.
Because you'll be trying to translate your native grammar directly into English.
Right, which is exactly where those awkward, disjointed sentences come from. Mastering the big 3 isn't about learning new definitions. It's about mastering the physics of English sentences.
Physics of the sentence. I really, really like that framing.
Yeah.
So the big 3 give us the architectural structure. They are the seal beams.
Yep.
But let's imagine a real high-stakes scenario. You are at a networking event, surrounded by native speakers.
Okay.
You understand the grammar, your structure is solid, but suddenly the specific formal verb you wanted to use completely evaporates from your brain.
The freeze.
Yes, you want to say you acquired a new skill or received an important document, but the word is just gone. What is the escape hatch? Because the research provides this phenomenal survival tool.
It really does. It is the ultimate linguistic wildcard, the word get.
The way native speakers lean on this single word is staggering.
It functions almost like a skeleton key.
Let's look at how it replaces incredibly specific formal actions in everyday speech. If a native speaker is anticipating a package, they rarely say, I am going to receive a delivery today.
No, they just say, I am going to get a delivery.
Right. And instead of asking a colleague, what time did you arrive at the office? They ask, what time did you get to the office?
Instead of saying, I finally comprehended this new software, they just smile and say, I finally get it.
And instead of, I need to purchase a flight, it's, I need to get a flight.
It covers acquisition, arrival, understanding, receiving, and state changes. You don't become sick, you get sick.
If you don't know the specific verb for whatever action you are trying to describe, you can almost always throw get in its place.
And suddenly the door opens and you are communicating.
But here is the massive psychological hurdle for adult learners. There is a deep-seated anxiety about sounding uneducated.
Oh, absolutely.
You spend years in language classes, being trained to use elevated vocabulary, receive, arrive, comprehend, acquire. Using a tiny 3-letter word like get feels like a major regression.
It feels like taking the lazy way out.
Exactly, and a lot of professionals avoid it because they think it makes them sound foolish.
That psychological barrier is arguably the biggest obstacle to natural fluency. We are conditioned to believe that complexity equals intelligence.
But in spoken English, that equation is completely false.
The irony is that avoiding words like get actually highlights that you aren't a native speaker. When an adult learner forces formal vocabulary into a casual conversation, it completely disrupts the natural rhythm.
I can picture that perfectly. Imagine standing by the water cooler and a coworker says, I finally comprehend the new corporate initiative, and I will purchase a sandwich before I arrive back at my cubicle.
It's grammatically flawless, but it sounds completely robotic.
It sounds like an email from the legal department, not a human being.
Right, it creates friction in the conversation. Native speakers optimize for efficiency and flow. A native speaker would naturally say, I finally get the new initiative, I'm going to get a sandwich before I get back to my desk.
It is so smooth, casual, and highly efficient.
Exactly. For a learner, embracing get isn't a sign of poor vocabulary. It is a massive evolutionary leap in sounding like a local. It demonstrates that you understand the cultural rhythm of the language, not just the textbook definitions.
That is incredibly liberating. We are officially giving everyone listening permission to stop over-engineering their sentences and just use the wild card.
Use the wild card.
So get is our universal escape hatch. But what happens when the wild card isn't quite enough? What happens when we are forced to be specific? And two of the most common verbs in the language violently collide with each other.
I know where you're going with this.
I'm talking about the classic struggle that haunts almost every English learner, make versus do.
The ultimate stumbling block. It is vital to unpack why this specific pairing causes so much chaos.
Why is it so confusing?
Well, it's not because learners aren't studying hard enough. It's a structural translation problem. In a massive number of global languages, Spanish, French, Italian, German, the concepts of creating something and performing an action are fused into one single verb.
Like husser in Spanish.
Or faire in French, machen in German.
So an English learner's brain is fundamentally wired to view these as one unified concept.
Precisely. They have spent their entire lives using one mental pathway for both ideas. Then they arrive at English, and we've essentially taken that single concept, chopped it in half, and assigned completely different rules to each half.
That feels incredibly arbitrary to a learner.
Right. Why do I do the dishes but I make the bed? Why do I do a favor but make a promise?
Without a mechanism to separate them, learners are forced to rely on rote memorization.
Which is exhausting and incredibly prone to failure.
Let's introduce the filter that completely solves this. The research distills this down to a brilliant, reliable rule of thumb.
It all comes down to the mechanism of creation versus execution.
You use make when you are creating or producing something entirely new. You are bringing something into existence that literally was not there before you took action.
Creation is the key metric. You are generating an outcome.
Let's look at some high-level adult examples.
Yeah.
You make an exception. Before you reviewed the policy, the exception did not exist.
You brought it into reality.
You make an investment. You make a decision. You make a mistake. In all these scenarios, your action resulted in a tangible new product, even if it's an abstract concept.
Right.
But on the flip side, you use do for execution. You use it for tasks, chores, and general activities where you aren't creating a new product.
You are simply completing a process or fulfilling a requirement.
You are executing an action, not manufacturing a result.
Exactly.
So you do the research, the data already exists, you are just performing the task of finding it. You do your taxes, you do business, you do the maintenance.
It's a subtle shift, but once you view it through the lens of creation versus execution, the fog really lifts.
It acts as an internal logic gate. Instead of trying to quickly scan a memorized list of like 500 phrases while in the middle of a stressful meeting, you just ask yourself one fundamental question.
Am I generating a brand new outcome right now, or am I just executing a task?
Let's apply the logic gate. If you are negotiating a contract and you want to offer a concession, do you make an offer or do you do an offer?
Okay, I apply the filter. Is an offer a pre-existing chore, or am I creating a new proposal that didn't exist a moment ago?
I'm creating it.
Therefore, I make an offer.
Perfect. What about damage? If a storm rolls through and ruins the roof, do the storm make damage or do damage?
That's a tricky one, but let's look at the mechanism. The storm didn't manufacture a new product called damage. It executed a destructive action upon a pre-existing roof.
So the storm did damage.
It works perfectly. It transforms language learning from blind memorization into logical problem solving.
And that underlying philosophy, understanding the core mechanics rather than memorizing surface-level rules, is really the ultimate key to fluency.
You build the engine first. You establish your scaffolding with be, have, and do. You learn to navigate around missing vocabulary with your get wildcard. You install your logic gates for tricky pairs like make and do.
And once that engine is humming along, you can always go back and upgrade the exterior.
You can add the shimmering chandeliers and the corporate jargon later. But first, you have to ensure the vehicle actually drives.
Which brings us to the core takeaway for today. Stop stressing over the thousands of niche words you don't know yet.
You do not need to swallow the entire dictionary to have a meaningful, impactful conversation today.
By focusing your energy on the mechanics of these high-frequency verbs, you immediately unlock the language.
I actually want to leave you with one final thought to ponder as you go about your day. Think about your own native language, whatever language that happens to be.
Okay.
We often romanticize our own languages, but if you really listen to how you and your friends speak casually, do you rely on a handful of wildcards without even realizing it?
Wait, really?
Yeah, pay close attention to your daily speech today. You might be shocked to discover that you already heavily rely on a version of get or do hundreds of times a day in your native tongue.
Completely on autopilot.
Yep, bypassing the formal dictionary entirely. It isn't laziness, it is simply how the human brain naturally optimizes communication.
That is an amazing perspective to end on. We are all just seeking the most efficient path to connect with one another.
Absolutely. Do not let the pursuit of perfect textbook vocabulary prevent you from actually connecting.
Build the engine, use the wildcards, and just start speaking. If this deep dive helps demystify your English journey today, please make sure to subscribe to the Clear English channel.
We are constantly breaking down these linguistic barriers.
And we would absolutely love to have you with us for the next one. Keep practicing, keep communicating, and we will see you next time.